Right, so that's it. We're live. So this is another bi-weekly SSSS. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is we've done a bit of rebranding, and the bi-weekly shows now form part of a bigger project. So I guess I'm going to let Ari Think talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, my name is Bryant. I'm with a company called Rethink. Basically, we're a loose collective of critical thinkers with a site dedicated to advancing scientifically minded critical inquiry towards extraordinary claims of all types. We want to serve as a resource for anybody looking to discuss the big questions of our day with a focus on, but of course not limited to, religion, history, science, tech, art, culture, philosophy, geopolitics, social issues, finance, basically anything you're willing to debate over, we're willing to have you. I recently partnered with Quantum Overload to host the Supernatural Science Salad Show. So he will be providing all the relevant links, I assume, in the bottom of this video once it gets published. But that's basically a spiel. We just got our first video up today. It was an interview with Ozymandias Ramses on discharging the burden of proof correctly. It's about an hour long, and it's on my channel now, so hopefully he'll link to that too. And that's pretty much my spiel. So glad to have him. Looking forward to doing big things.
Okay, so I think George had some topic ideas. Did you want to start us off, George?
Yes, it was mentioned several times in previous episodes, and we have never really touched it. I wanted to talk about the Islamic State and was wondering what the other people thought of it. Recently, this week, we have seen they've started bombing, and in a lot of Western countries like mine, in the Netherlands and in the UK, there is some political discussion if they should also bomb in Syria or just in Iraq. And personally, I think they should have started bombing about 2 years ago, uh, when IS was not so big and they were called different. I forgot what they were called back then. Even before they were called ISIL. You had in Syria the Al Nusra Front, that is basically an offshoot of Al Qaeda, and they were fighting the Syrian forces. And besides them, you had a lot of little groups in Syria, and I was wondering about 2 years ago why it took so long for the West and perhaps the Arabian countries in the neighborhood too, of course, because they have a direct interest in it. At least that's how I see it. And that they should have done something much sooner. And now the result, because nothing happened, is that ISIL, now IS, the Islamic State, had a chance to grow and grow and grow and grow and become more powerful. I hear an echo. And yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you guys. What you thought about that? Well, silence. uh, Basically, one of
I'm
the things.
sorry.
Yes.
I stepped out right in the middle of your point, so
Oh no, that doesn't matter. um, Basically, one of the problems now, of course, a major problem is that you see a lot of basically Western Muslims going to the Islamic State, tearing with their passports and going over there to fight. And that's the point, basically, when now the West says from, oh, we got a problem, so we gotta wipe them out, so let's start bombing. But I can't get grasp my head around it 100%. I understand some of the points why they only want to bomb in Iraq and not in Syria. Because if you also bomb in Syria, you will of course be helping the regime, and that's something they do not want to do. So what were your guys' point on that? Any ideas?
Well, I'm going to have to refer to some of the other people because I don't know that much about it. Does anyone else want to bring up any points about this?
I think that a lot of this, I guess, Islamically flavored rebellion is ultimately motivated by, essentially the sort of, say, dictatorial regimes supported by the West and the, economic, I guess, oppression or whatever, where, the regimes are destabilized or changed, whatever, to get cheaper oil, blah, blah, blah. And you could merely take a different approach of, say, cooperating with the people and try to help build them up instead of keep them down and so on, and they wouldn't hate you for it.
The point is because they didn't do anything for at least 2 years, is that the whole issue has grown out of hand, and now you got a lot of side issues. You see women being raped and kidnapped. You see some of the IS terrorists kidnap people and hold them for ransom. You see, of course, the Western captured people being beheaded. Now, Western countries themselves are in fear from, oh boy, what will happen to us when those Western Muslims return to our country? What will they do then? And so it basically has grown out of proportions, and I really think they should have done something 2 years ago when Assad's regime was not so strong. They had a chance to do something, and and that's kind of worrying because I look a lot of I look at CNN, I look at TV news and things like that. So perhaps Rethink has an opinion about it, because I understand you do geopolitics.
I'm not. I honestly don't have too much to contribute on the ISIS issue and the Islamic State. I actually don't know too much about it. I'm still sort of digging into it from what sort of sources I can find. I don't have too much to weigh in on about it. I'm painfully ignorant on it. Unfortunately, right now, it's just, yeah, I'm still looking into it, and I like to always try to look as much into it as I can before I sort of weigh in with an opinion. But from what I do know, it sounds like there's more I don't know than I do know right now. There's a lot to dig into there.
Yes, that's basically, of course, because it has grown out of hand. So there's a lot of things to watch. Basically, of course, you have the issue of the two Islamic sects fighting each other. You got the Sunnis is IS, and which is the largest sect within the Islamic world, if I'm correct. The whole of Turkey, about 80% of Muslims in Turkey are Sunni. You have also about 1,000 Turkish fighters fighting for IS, is the rough estimate I read somewhere. So yeah, there are a lot of side issues playing, but I understand a lot of people here do not know much about it or haven't paid much attention on the particular subject. So perhaps it's better that we do not discuss it as in its whole now. And
well, the only thing I can contribute with is that in Scandinavia we have a lot of young Muslim guys who have been recruited through the mosques in our countries, and then they have gone down to the Middle East and they joined IS. So it has been a bit of a big deal in our media. And we have talked to the mosque if they think this is a problem, and then of course they say no, we don't promote this extremism. but we still have a lot of young Muslims who still are getting recruited.
Yeah, you see that in a lot of other countries. There are a lot of Belgium and British persons, Germans, Muslims from France, from the Netherlands, from all over Europe. They're going there to fight. Perhaps, what do you think? What is so attractive for these guys to go fight there? Because you have all this freedom in the West, basically, and we're a liberated society. So, what could be attracted them besides the faith, the Muslim faith?
Well, I think it has something to do with these young men. They need to find an identity. They feel like outsiders in the countries they live. Even though they are born in the countries, they might still feel like outsiders, and they want to be part of something where they feel home. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but interesting. I was watching.
It's the same. It's the same with gangs, for example. I think it's the exact same problem.
That's interesting that you mentioned, because I was watching the Belgium news broadcast just about 2-3 hours ago, and they mentioned that since a lot of Belgian youth went to Syria and Iraq to fight for the Islamic State, that criminality numbers in some of the places these guys came from dropped significantly. So basically saying that a lot of those guys which are now fighting for the Islamic State were in the West petty criminals, and that it's theory, but they potentially may be doing things there which they were directly be thrown in jail for in the West. They couldn't do it here, so they're gonna do it over there.
Sure, because when people, they always are looking for excuses to do what they want. For example, if they think that they are outsiders, they might blame the society and they want to do more crime against it because they think that society are wrong, not them.
Yeah, but then it's interesting because the Quran doesn't condone a lot of criminality either. There are some videos visible on LiveLeak that if people who were caught cheating, they're literally cutting off their hands, just as it says in the Quran. So it's kind of funny, really.
But once again, it depends what the context is. Are you stealing for God? Because then it's probably okay, I would guess.
Yeah, they're saying that's the theory they had in Belgium, that because they couldn't do it here, they're doing it there, and there they steal from their enemies, which they consider kafirs, so infidels.
Yeah,
and then it's okay. It's kind of silly. That's that religious mind twist again.
Yeah. We all know that the Bible endorses genocide as long as it's against the infidels.
Yeah, exactly. And another example, there was an interview. I thought it was on the Dutch channel somewhere this week. And they were interviewing, or it was CNN. I know it was CNN. I saw it on the CNN website. They were interviewing a Muslim girl in a Turkish refugee camp. I don't know if she was a Kurd or not. It doesn't matter really. The girl was 14 or 15, and they said we were leaving our town because IS was coming, but we encountered a column of cars with black flags, and yeah, they couldn't escape. Her brother was killed. She only learned that later, but all the girls were separated and brought up to Mosul, I think it was 150 kilometers away. And there they were kept, and there they were, well, basically, what do grown men with AK-47s do with young girls? You can imagine. She said she wasn't raped herself, but probably because of the shame culture, she won't say that she is raped. But the point is, it's a Muslim girl, and even for the Quran, it's wrong to rape women. But why can they rape these Muslim girls? Because they and these are Sunni girls even, but they are Sunnis just like the Islamic State guys, but Sunnis from the enemy. So then again, it's okay for them because it's the enemy. So then we can rape the women. It's that religious mind twist. It's disgusting, really.
Yeah, the funny thing is,
Real quick.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't know if you could hear me. I wanted to also add real quick that there's a great article. There's a lot of confusion between the Sunnis and Shiites and the different warring factions. I'm actually working on a video of reposting an article at whowhatwhy.com. I think it's called From ISIS to Muhammad or something like that. And it's just a great story. It's just like it sort of went viral briefly. It's really known for its giving a crash course to the complete layman about all the different warring factions there. So if anybody hasn't already read it, go check that out at whatwhy.com. And there's a story called From ISIS to Muhammad or something like that.
Yeah, I basically I know I got a Quran at home. I don't use it as toilet paper or as some people did a few years ago. I have it at home for study, but I haven't got around to it because I got a lot of religious books here I still have to read. One is the Mahabharata with 17,000 pages.
That is a great. I'm reading that one right now. Out of all the religious texts I've read, that is actually the best.
Yeah, but that'll take me a few years to finish, I think. But my point is, I basically know a little bit about the Sunnis and the Shiites because I may get the factions mixed up. But I believe the Sunnis.
Well, I can break it down for people watching. Well, it basically comes down to that Sunni Muslims. It has something to do with who should inherit the position of Prophet Muhammad.
Yes.
And the Sunnis believe that it should be the person who is most qualified for the positions, while the Shia Muslims believe that it should be the people who are in the same bloodline of Muhammad. But then the problem comes, how are they going to prove the bloodline of Muhammad? And that's probably why there are most Sunnis in the world, because it's more logical in a way.
Exactly. So basically, and now you got the leader of the Islamic State. I forgot his name quickly, al-Baghdadi or something like that, and he claims to be a direct descendant from the Prophet Muhammad.
That's quite a claim. That's quite a claim.
Yes, but that's what he claims. So yeah, that's basically like a crazy person in a nut house saying, "I'm a direct descendant from Jesus Christ."
But a thing I have noticed with the Islamic religion is that out of all the religions, it's still the youngest, and they haven't even had their own reformation period like Christianity. And I think that's what that religion really needs. It hasn't really been modernized in any way or shape or form. It really needs that, but that's probably because it's so young. We need more time for it, I guess.
Yeah, but
we are still, luckily we are seeing some Muslim women who are trying to get equal rights. For example, I think in a court of law in an Islamic state, I think it takes 3 or 4 men. No, it takes 4 women against 1 man when it comes to eyewitness before it's fair. It's ridiculous.
Yes, because a woman is valued only half.
Oh, it's half. Okay.
Yeah, if it was the other way around, you would only need 2 men because you need 4 women because a woman is only valued half. In some Muslim states, when it comes down to voting and where women also have votes, a woman's vote only is worth half. So if you ever want to have a women's party in an Islamic country, you have a problem because even if you get 10,000 women to vote for you, you will only be counted for 5,000. So it's kind of silly, but yeah. And that's very strange if they say they respect women so much, but and then you have all these things. But basically, I wanted to add to what you said that why is it that the Islam, the Muslim faith, didn't have a reformation yet? The Muslim faith had their golden age very early on, of course, and almost directly after that, you see the colonization of the world by Europe, basically.
Sure, but it's not a reformation. A golden age is not the same as a reformation. They didn't have like we had Martin Luther King. Martin Luther, for example. We had him, who is the father of Protestantism, for example.
Yes, and I know that's basically what I wanted to say. He had the golden age of the Muslim faith, and almost directly after that, you had the rise of Europe worldwide. So, and that's what I wanted to say, that they never got a chance.
Well, you might say their dark age was after the Muslim conquest, and then the recovery from the Dark Age never happened because of European affairs. But okay.
What do you mean?
Like Hulagu Khan raising Baghdad and essentially knocked the Muslim world into a dark age, right?
Oh, well, was it the Mongols who sacked libraries, or who was it? I can't remember. After the, I think it's after the end of the Islamic Golden Age. It was right when it was an Islamic scholar. He was called Al-Ghazali. You've probably heard of him. He was the guy who said that mathematics is the work of the devil, and that pretty much stopped all the progress. And some historians also say that I think there was the Mongols. They also invaded some of the Islam, and that's basically what led to the Islam we now know today.
Well, that's basically their own fault, because Genghis Khan, if I recall correctly, my history, I did when I was in military school, I had for a non-commissioned officer, I had to do an English speech, and I did it about Genghis Khan, so I know a little bit about it. Islam was very widely spread. I don't know anything about the scientists, but I heard it. I think it was last week that it came up. So. But anyway, Genghis Khan sent some diplomats towards India, which at the time was very a big empire. I forgot the name of the empire, and they sent his diplomats back in a little box without the body, so basically only the head, and he wasn't very pleased about that, so he took his whole army and decided we're gonna invade India. And well, when he trampled the Indian kings and queens to death under his horses, he decided, well, now I'm in India, let's go look ahead what more things I can conquer, because this was so easy. Let's see what we can do more in the West. What we can how do you say? I forget the English word. Well, basically, he was in India and it went so easy, and he decided, well, I'm going further. And that's when he encountered the Muslims for the first time, basically. So. And then he took over a lot of Arabia, or what it was called back then, and they never recovered from that. And then he went to Russia, and he almost came into Europe, I recall. But that's a bit sidetracking.
Yeah, but it's really sad to think about it, because they probably had one of the greatest golden ages of all civilizations. It's really sad that they just that all of it just got destroyed.
Yeah, I see Nadia said in India there were the Mughals, but I think, if I'm correct, the Mughals were actually the Mongol conquerors who renamed themselves, and then you had the Mughals. I think in India before, we can all look it up in Wiki. I think before they were called different, but after Genghis Khan left his family members there and they became the new reigning members of India, they were called the Mughals, if I'm correct. But I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, the Mughals were the descendants of the Mongols. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
I think it was the Aryans before.
Yeah, and what you said in the chat, he made it to Poland, and then I think it was Subutai who died back then. Not Genghis Khan, he was already dead by then. Subatai's armies made it into Poland, and they were about to fight a European army. And they set up camp across each other, across a river. And the next day, the Polish knights came out of sleep, and they looked over the plains, and the Mongols were gone. And they thought they must have been scared of us. But what really happened was that they heard that the great Khan, died. And so the generals in the Mughal army decided we have to go back because we got to elect a new leader. So that's why they never conquered Europe, because the Khan died.
Thank God for that.
Yeah, and in Poland they still have a celebration day, a national celebration day, if I'm correct, celebrating that they defeated the Mongols, but they never defeated the Mongols because they never fought them. So.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have our own expert at the Middle East, Nathan.
Hey, how's it going? I'm not an expert. I just live here, but I think most people.
That's a pretty good. That's a pretty good qualification, in my opinion.
Yeah, I did study it for a while, so. But I think most people who live here are somewhat more expert than people who don't.
Well, we were talking about the Islamic State, and we kind of sidetracked.
Yeah, well, actually I'm going to be. I'm supposed to comment on that next week on the Magic Sandwich Show. I told DPR that I could join in on that, so he said okay. So yeah, if I can make it, I'll be commenting.
All right, not to give everything away for the Magic Sandwich Show. What, in short, what's your opinion on it? Do you think? Because the first question I asked, and you missed that, is that I personally believe that they should have acted against the Syrian regime 2 years ago, and the West, I mean, and perhaps potential other Arabian countries, and they didn't, and now it's grown all out of hand. So, and I think they should have done some 2 years ago, and now they started bombing, and basically it's too late. That's my opinion.
I absolutely agree. 2 years ago, I called for action. I knew nobody would take action, but I called for it. The problem really is the mindset in the West. There's a whole lot of idiocy in the West, and frankly, a lot of it comes from a feeling of guilt. Which is, I think, misplaced. And also, it comes from a feeling that somehow violence is never the solution, when in fact, in the rest of the real world, violence is almost always the solution. Westerners tend to be extremely squeamish about accepting this reality, accepting the brutal nature of nature itself, of the world. I'm not too pleased about how the world is sometimes, but I live in it. I have to be pragmatic, and as much of an idealist as I can be, and I can be an extremely utopian type of idealist at times, I also have to contend with the fact that I live in the real world, and much as I think that killing people and being in danger of being killed really does suck. It's horrible. It's in fact, it's horrific. I have to accept the fact that this is, the reality that I live in this part of the world. And just because if I'm back in the States or I'm back in Europe living there, I live in a bubble, it doesn't mean that the rest of the world corresponds to the bubble in which I live. So yeah, Westerners have a real problem in accepting this. They're tired of Iraq, they're tired of Afghanistan. Well, guess what? Most of the world lives under war for decades, if not centuries, and saying that you're tired is kind of a luxury that you cannot afford if you live in a world that has to be interconnected and respond to other things around it. It's not a luxury that we can afford anymore. You can try isolation, but it doesn't exactly work too well. So that's my little rant for the night.
Yeah, but I agree. I read something years ago of a person said if we abolished all armies today in every country in the world, all that money spent on armies yearly could solve problems like hunger and poverty in an instant. But we do not live in a world in which that is ever going to happen, at least not for now. So
no, and in fact, I said I was a utopian idealist, and I am. I actually do believe. I know it's going to sound crazy. Every time I say it, people will probably take this out of context. But I am actually a Star Trek utopian idealist in a sense. I do believe in the ideal of a type of federation 200, 300 years from now. I think that's actually where humanity will lead up to. But I don't think that's going to happen now, nor would I try to make that happen now. It just wouldn't work now. You need an evolution in the societies all across the world for that to happen. I do think it will happen eventually, and I want it to happen. And would rather it happen sooner than later. But it's not going to happen ever if we don't confront the brutal regimes in our world, and it won't happen if we take a completely pacifist, isolationist view. Because what's the end result of pacifism? Not that most people are pacifists, but their reactions sometimes are pacifist. Well, the result of pacifism is that evil will win, because who's going to stop it? If we had tried pacifism in World War II, Hitler would have won. It's clear. I mean, people did try some form of pacifism at first, and they got absolutely slaughtered. People have tried pacifism in various points in the Arab Revolution, the Arab Spring. They got slaughtered. In most places where people take a pacifist stance, they get slaughtered. And that's just the way it is. So what's the end result of pacifism worldwide? Would be an absolute victory for evil. You cannot confront evil. You cannot change these societies. You cannot get rid of this kind of, gross violations of human rights without actually going to war for it. It didn't. People are so happy that we got rid of slavery. Well, how did we do it? Both in America and across the seas, we butchered our way for freedom for slaves. That's how we did it. The UK had an enlightened moment, but what did they do with it afterwards? They went around slaughtering slavers on the high seas by order of Her Majesty. This was a directive given by the throne. So and I'm happy for it. I'm happy that they slaughtered those people. I'm happy that they hung them up on the gibbets for everyone to see. But that was the only way they were going to ever get rid of slavery. And you just can't say that violence doesn't solve anything. It does, unfortunately. It's not the only solution, meaning that you need, after the violence, you need some sort of diplomatic resolution. You need some sort of understanding, some sort of societal change. But yeah, you need to have the fight first, and that is something that apparently we've forgotten. I don't know why.
Yeah, with everything you said, I 100% agree, and perhaps that is because I'm a huge Star Trek fan myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Star Trek, and I grew up with it, and I love the ideals of Star Trek, and I respect them, and I agree with them, but those ideals are formed in the Star Trek universe, so to speak. These ideas are only formed if the entire, world agrees to them. Much like, our American ideals or our European ideals only work in a society where everyone accepts them. As soon as you leave those borders of the society, then you run into problems. Then you run into problems where you don't, there is no perfect society because you're outside of those confines of that kind of perfect society. Not that America or Europe are perfect, but they're.
And once again, look what it took for the civilization in Star Trek to become a united civilization. It took a nuclear war.
It took a nuclear war, and I always point this out. All these utopian societies that were written about in the 50s and the 60s, they take place after the war. These people were not blind to the fact that this is probably what was going to happen for this kind of society to emerge, and I'm not blind to that fact either. It is not something I'm very happy about, and it's something I hope that we avoid. But it is a real reality in terms of how will we have to go about changing society. I'm not advocating that we start one. I would rather prevent that.
In my book, there are only two ways in order to unite the whole planet. It's either way we get a nuclear war, so we demolish all the values we have in our culture so we can unite as one, or we get a common goal, for example, like a common enemy we can unite against.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. That's the other thing. And to be fair, Star Trek in its later years did not. I don't know. We went from ISIS to Star Trek, but Star Trek in its later years was very realistic about their perfect society. Because again, in the Star Trek universe, once you leave the confines of the Federation, you run into people who don't respect the rules of the Federation, and you have to compromise those values, sometimes really harshly, to basically survive. That a lot of later episodes in various shows of the Star Trek series were about those kind of things. So it wasn't blind to the fact that, once we reach a worldwide utopia, then, the entire universe is going to be that way. No. It's the same thing with Europe. Once Europe reaches some sort of consensus, etc., it doesn't mean that the rest of the world is going to necessarily follow. And once you leave the confines of that society, you're going to be back in the jungle. And you will have to respond to the situations in the jungle as if you had never been, brought up in a perfect society. And I think we've forgotten that. We really have forgotten it. We've become so spoiled that we have these lofty ideals about, violence doesn't solve anything. Well, no, it doesn't. Not in America, not in Europe, but in many other places, it sure as fuck does.
I recall being interviewed by a religious magazine for the army about 15 years ago, and I was being interviewed by I think it was a Catholic journalist, and he interviewed me and two other girls. I was a soldier back then, and like those girls, and I said because we were talking about all kinds of things on our view on life, and I said to the Catholic journalist that I thought a little world war now and again isn't a bad thing, and they were disgusted about that. But it's exactly what you just said. What I meant with that, because sometimes and it's horrible for all the killing. But sometimes you need a large event to make progress.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I'm not happy about it, but
Yeah, but one thing which you haven't mentioned, which I will mention because I am of strong conviction on that, is that if we would ever want a society like that, which you just said, which basically is a Star Trek utopian idea, and perhaps we can't 100% ever get it, because you will still have cultural differences, but I think one of the things we really need to get rid of worldwide is religion.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I say this, by the way. I'm planning on going to Jerusalem tomorrow morning. So yeah, I'm
be careful.
cognizant of
Be careful.
No.
Uh,
Listen,
let, let,
I know Jerusalem like the back of my hand. Although I haven't been there in years, but
let's hope the Mossad isn't listening in.
yeah, no. Look, I live in Israel. I live in Haifa. Going there to see the place. I haven't been there in I think 4 years, and I'm gonna take some pictures and stuff. Um, but yeah, I completely agree. We have to shed our religious convictions. You keep the culture if you want. I'm not against keeping Christmas culturally or Hanukkah culturally or Ramadan culturally or anything like that. But I am against the belief in God, and I am against the belief in the superiority of one religion over another, or
But Nathan, then once again, you remember when I asked you this question? Again, we come back to that the Muslims can't separate their culture from the religion. They can't separate it. That's why they call themselves Muslims instead of Arabs.
Yes, I know it's true.
I actually think they are the only. Them and the Jews, I think they are the only ones who do that, aren't they? Or does
but the difference is most Jews are agnostic.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's a fact. It's a statistical fact that most Jews are agnostic or atheist overall. It's true that the religious ones are very vocal, to say the least. But the problem really is Islam is Arabism. It's Arabism in every single way. It's the entire Arab identity made into a religion. It's very difficult to separate Islam from Arabs and Arabs from Islam, or it defines them in every single way. Even Christians and Jews who grew up in Muslim countries will say things like "Inshallah," whereas that should really only be Muslims who say it. But it's such a ingrained thing in the culture itself, because Islam is Arabic culture, just in a religious form. And so it's extremely difficult to separate. It will take a revolution, frankly. It will take blood to do it.
Okay. If I can chime in on a few points. So I think the first of the three is that the progress has happened over the centuries. I think Steven Pinker documents in the Better Angels of Our Nature. And in that, it seems to be, number one, I guess, communication, so that the outrage or whatever, or maybe sympathy, or regardless, is transmitted far more broadly, so you have less of in-group, out-group separation and so on, and less indifference. And the other big influence I recall, I think, is essentially policing. That when you're watched, when you have some kind of higher authority, it's actually vigilance and so on, you tend not to do quite as much of it, and I think a lot of it can be correlated relatively well to that. As far as like the violence levels and so on, and even to the extent that we've had, say, the 20th century, the First and Second World Wars, the 20th century still managed to be, well, the least bloody century of all time by virtue of effectively the reduction in the dispersed or individual homicide rates. Next is that I think I forgot the one in the middle, but I'll just skip right to the end. The Arabism and Islam are, oh, I remember it now, I'll do a third. The trick with that is that Indonesia is where a vast number of Muslims live and they're not Arab.
I know. But their religious culture is Arab.
It might be they do experience an Arab influence, essentially by means of Islam transmitting it.
Their entire culture is based on Arabism. Islam is Arabism. It is the claim that Arabism is the superior existence in the entire universe. I mean, you can't, you know, religious Indonesian women go around wearing the hijab. This is an entirely foreign importation to them. Indonesians natively didn't wear anything like a hijab. It is. They pray towards Mecca. Their entire holy book is Arabic. They only speak about it. They only recite it in Arabic. This is, you know, to them, Arabic is the most pure language in the entire world, even if they don't. Most of them don't even understand it or speak it. So yeah, it is Arabism. You can't say that Indonesia, their indigenous culture before they became Muslim, was anything like Islam. Nothing. It was nothing like it.
Okay, that's number 2 out of 3. I think there's a better contest that can be made there by someone who's more knowledgeable than I, but even so, you know, I'll let that stand. Last but not least is that it's not clear that it's truly religion that is the dominant factor in this world peace and such. It's more complex than, you know, just believing in a deity. I mean, you can try out examples of you know, warlike atheists and you know, between Pol Pot and Stalin, the usual right-wing talking points. I mean, they weren't anything of the scale the right-wing claims, but they still are examples of this. And you can also trot out, you know, plenty of peaceful religionists. And ultimately, there's a deciding factor that has an association with religion. You know, definitely the in-group, out-group mentality is a big part of it. I'd almost even say the right-wing cognitive frame is a big aspect of it. But still, we need to be a little bit more careful because I'm not entirely sure it's possible to do anything on the order of eradicating religion. I think it may not even be desirable. I mean, like you say, the Christmas and Hanukkah, and, you know, what is it? Ramadan or something like that. You know, they're all in Diwali and all those things. Yeah.
I agree with you, Nadia. We may never fully get rid of religion, and I think it's because it's like Daniel Dennett said, we have this strong urge to have something that we can all come together with. We need traditions. So in order for religion to go away, we need something in its place. Something that's very close to it, but doesn't necessarily worship a divine being, but we need it.
Is
as
the
a
worship of the
cultural.
divine being? Is the worship of the divine being the harmful aspect? I'm not clear that it is. I think that, like you say, that those Ingrid Buck claims that all the other religions in the world are so wrong, and or the Christian claims that effectively everything that's not
But let's analyze.
satanic and so on is the big deal. Go ahead.
Sure, but let's analyze. For example, you mentioned Pol Pot and Stalin. Even though those countries didn't believe in a divine being, they made themselves divine beings, like the emperor in Japan, for example. So it's all come back to this idea of something more powerful than your standard humans. It's the closest thing to a deity. It's not secular at all. So once again, these problems in the world, they come from this inner feeling of something greater that ultimately leads to corruption.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I don't think that we're going to realistically get rid of religion anytime soon. Certainly not in our lifetimes. And after that, well, it's not for us to care. But I do think that eventually we will have to. Again, I don't mean forget all your culture, but I do mean that people will have to stop worshiping at some point. They'll have to realize that it's just bullshit. And you won't advance society in any way by believing in bullshit. And frankly, it is. There's nothing in religion that is ever proved. We've gone over this so many times ad nauseum. There's no proof whatsoever that these are stories that were made up a long time ago by people who knew nothing, literally nothing. Your average person in the Amazon jungle, your average tribesman in the Amazon jungle knows more about the entire world today, more about technology today, by using a phone, by having seen an airplane, by understanding electricity in the most rudimentary way than these quote-unquote wise men ever knew about the entire world around them, which was probably around 20 to 30 kilometers around them, give or take. These were not enlightened individuals in any sense of the word. And the fact that some people think that they are really puts these people, in my view, in the complete moron, section of the human race. I just have no, I have no understanding why somebody would actually think that somebody from 2,000 years ago knew so bloody much about the universe. They knew nothing about the universe. They didn't even know enough about germ theory to know that most people didn't wash their hands, or didn't know that you could that some germs were airborne. They didn't know germs existed. They thought it was genies, etc. So yeah, how could these people impart to us wisdom from down the ages? They had no wisdom from their own time. So yeah, I don't think that religion is a good thing. I just don't. It's interesting culturally, it's fun, but other than that, no. I think that it has to be done away with at some level.
I dispute a bit of the justification as well as the conclusion. So on the justification, you can look at, say, Aristarchus and Eratosthenes. Aristarchus, found the distance from the Earth to the Moon, and I believe even estimated its size with, some accuracy, although maybe it was like 10% error or something like that.
Right, I agree.
And Eratosthenes, the radius of the Earth, and so on. And we've done better since then.
Right, and would we take his proclamations on other things which have not been proven by science as literally as we have taken his measurements of the Earth? No, we wouldn't, because we know better. So he was a genius for his time. That's absolutely certain. but other than what he discovered, which can be proved mathematically and with science, we don't take him on any other thing that he would have ever have said, because we know better and we've discovered more, and we are not, standing on the shoulders of giants. We are standing on the shoulders of midgets to see further and further ahead. So I'm not disputing his findings. I'm not disputing the findings of other people, Pythagoras, etc. But I'm saying that these things can be proven with mathematics, with science, and the other things that they believed in, and they believed in some pretty wacky ideas. We would not take face value, not at all.
It's what you sometimes hear creationists say. Basically, the same argument is that Newton also believed in God, but they forget the fact that he lived in a time they basically did not know much about the universe yet, and they were still discovering it. And if Newton had lived today, he would be an atheist.
Yeah,
he actually thought that the Catholic Church was the work of the devil.
Yeah. But again, he also believed in alchemy. So should we think that alchemy is true? He was a real diehard alchemist. He wrote more about alchemy than any other subject he had ever written about. So does that mean that we should go around trying to transform things with, the Philosopher's Stone? Obviously, this is a patently ridiculous argument that creationists throw out and that religious people throw out. It's moronic. It's absolutely moronic. The things that we respect Newton for, the things that we respect, Pythagoras for, and Archimedes, are things which are borne out with science. We don't respect their other opinions on other things because, frankly, we know better. And had they lived today, they would be in agreement because they were scientifically minded enough to understand that science actually does trump everything else.
The angle I was going out with justification, though, was that those ancient approximations to the sizes of the Earth and the Moon and so on are things that, while do stand the test of time, we can repeat their observations, get similar accuracies. And then the trick is, today we have refined, we have elaborated, and so on. And to try to move to the conclusion, when it comes to things like moral philosophy and other forms of it, we've had 2,000 years of metaphysics and ethics and everything else to arrive at better justified, better elaborated theories than any of them presented. So when it comes to, say, trying to eliminate these things, it's an evolutionary process, maybe of, I guess, enlightenment of them from within is likely a far better strategy than trying to chisel them down from without, especially because, like Dennis says, there's something almost innate that drives people to it.
Wait. I think we are comparing oranges to apples here. We of course the ancient Greeks, they knew far more than the authors of the Bible. For example, I don't think we can compare them. The same with the Babylonians. They knew far more, and they are far older culture. They knew way more than the authors of the Bible. So of course, they already had knowledge. But when we only look at these ancient people in the Middle East, they didn't know anything at all. So I don't think we can compare them to the Greeks.
But I think, look, even the Babylonians. Once again, the things that we respect them for are the things which are tested and tried by science. We don't respect their views on slavery. We don't respect their views on women.
Be careful. They were writing in Greek. They were Hellenized Jews. They alluded to the Iliad.
I know. But again, once again, the things that we respect them for are borne out with science, not not their views on other subjects, which have absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever.
They don't even
frankly,
discuss
I'm
science.
not so sure. I'm not even so sure that many of them actually really believed these things. They had a culture which we no longer understand of telling stories. We no longer do this on the same level, and we no longer, accept the storytelling form as we no longer enshrine it in the same way that they used to. But just because they enshrined it in a certain way doesn't mean that they actually took it at face value. I'm not so certain that the Greeks took their stories at face value either.
They
No, of
didn't.
course they didn't.
They didn't.
Philo, Origin, Eusebius all talked about the esoteric versus exoteric meanings and so on. Of course, they didn't take it at face value, and they had no intention. I mean, they were orchestrating literary structures with all these chiastic cycles and diptychic contrasts and so on. But in the meantime, the topic of their discussion, what they illustrate with these esoteric meanings are matters of philosophical interest, not scientific. And when they do so, we don't have the refinements of Newton and Einstein to beat them with, but Hume and Wittgenstein. And we should bear in mind it's a very different topic from anything like science.
I understand, and I actually don't respect it as much, but that's another matter altogether.
Actually, I just thought about something when we talked about the Babylonians. We say that the authors of the Bible, they knew nothing. Actually, it's far worse than that. They didn't even know they didn't even make their own stories. Most of the stories in the Old Testament are from the Babylonians. They are just versions of their stories.
Sure.
For example, the story of Adam and Eve in the garden is taken from an old I think actually it's a Sumerian legend. It's an old king, and he has two servants who go in his garden and steal some of his fruit, and for that he banishes them out of the garden, and that's where the story comes from.
Sure, but I don't think that the people who came up with these stories or who imported them into their own culture, into the Jewish culture, I don't think that they actually took it literally at first. Maybe over time they did, but I don't think that their intention was for it to be taken literally. These were stories that were, they had an alien culture to ours in every single respect. And
yeah,
people
it was right at the birth of monotheism, when they still believed in all the other gods. For example, they still believed in Baal Seol, for example.
Yeah. They still had, in fact, they still had statues of Baal for hundreds of years after monotheism that we're still digging up here in Israel. So, again, I think it was much more of a mishmash of cultures, because Israel is a land bridge. So you had at the time cultures from Asia, you had cultures from Africa, and cultures from Europe all meeting here in this area. And people would borrow and take from one another all the time. This was not uncommon. This was, and it wasn't even considered bad. I mean, it was just what people did around the campfire, around the dinner table. So it's something that we don't quite fathom with our modern lives.
I do.
And to ascribe to it some sort of deeper knowledge, deeper understanding is just ludicrous, frankly.
No, we do understand it. It's less common or less heavily utilized in our age, but we know what allegory is. We know what the quote unquote esoteric versus exoteric meanings are, and there's no trouble with anybody reading Vanity Fair as allegories for all kinds of things.
I would. Yes, I agree on some level. Yes, I agree. But It's really hard to put yourself in the shoes. It's almost impossible to put yourself in the shoes of somebody from back then.
And
We're not that ignorant. It's very hard to be ignorant.
No, we are ignorant of the historical context. We don't know, necessarily, what someone's day was like. What even the process of their going to the bathroom was, or how they wash themselves, or what the fashion styles were back then. I mean, people think of Jesus, they have no idea what kind of haircut the men back then.
And he wasn't white. He wasn't white.
Well, of course, but still.
I'd like to add something. You can also see this happening in the early development of the Catholic Church. That back then, when you see pictures of Jesus now, it's most of the time a blonde guy or white skin and a beard. But when you look at the early forms of art used by the Catholic Church, he looks more like Apollo. And even the ring around his head, the aureole, or how do you call that? That's also something they took from previous faiths.
Yeah, but I mean, but hell, the Romans did it too. The Romans were copying from the Greeks, and the Greeks had copied from other cultures.
Etruscans.
Yeah,
the Minoans, of course.
The Etruscans as well. But this was a normal thing to do. The concept of a god back then was entirely different than it is today.
It was more human-like, I would say.
Yeah, it was more human-like, but it was also, you could borrow things, and the gods would be pleased. This would not upset the gods.
And they weren't perfect. They weren't perfect either. They were also capable of making stupid things.
Right, exactly.
The borrowing is syncretism, and arguably all of the mystery cults were syncretic. For instance, Osiris mystery cults merged in Egyptian with Greco-Roman. Essentially, it was Greco-Roman and whatever foreign land they conquered that were syncretic mystery cults. On top of that, they had no trouble just making up new deities on the fly for all kinds of purposes. Alexandrian conquest of Egypt saw, Serapis and Zeus Ammon getting installed in Egypt, and Harpocrates and a couple of other. Well, I guess Osiris and Isis getting hauled back to Greece and such. The conquest of Judea by Romans and such. Essentially did a similar process, but there was additional syncretism going on with, of course, the Sumerians, Babylonians, and everything else. You see, for instance, that the resurrection story and the ascension of Isaiah is a mirror image. You can literally go verse for verse, line it up with the descent of Inanna. They didn't just borrow the story; they borrowed the verse structure, line for line. And this borrowing is pretty clear in terms of some of the philosophical ideas behind, say, all salvation and damnation stuff on the order of various of the other mystery cults, like cult of Orpheus, for example, is cited as a big one. So when it's all pieced together, there's a lot of the ideas are traceable, and furthermore, the amount of literature out there is actually, it's big for a person to absorb. It's not big relative to what was actually out there, and people don't know it, and it's our ignorance in that respect of even the evidence we do have that makes us less able to relate to these things and interpret them properly, and even get the right message out of the text and so on. Okay, go ahead.
No, I really have nothing else to say.
You can even see in the beginning of the times when Muhammad still lived that in a lot of the Arabian palaces, and when they were all Muslims back then, so in the beginning of the faith, the palaces were filled with nudity. And when you see how they react to nudity now, it's basically cover it up, and you don't want to see the woman. But besides religion, I always say the debate between theism and atheism is not just purely about religion, it's also about religion and culture combined. And that's why you see religions develop over time. That's not because the text changes, but it's because the culture changes.
Yeah, no, I agree. But
Well,
you know, to go back to what's happening today, um, we have a real problem because the culture at large in this area of the world is accepting of this at a certain point. Now, ISIS is being marginalized and sidelined right now by almost every Arab state, etc. But the thing that they really have to confront is why is ISIS so attractive? Why is it so popular to some people? And the fact is that it's culturally acceptable. It's a cultural end to what they've been preaching for a long time, and people don't want to confront that. People even in the West don't want to confront that. They keep saying that ISIS is un-Islamic, it's not Islam, blah blah. Well, fuck that. It is Islamic. They go around quoting the Quran. They go around quoting the Hadith. They want to make a caliphate. They call themselves the Islamic State. Why should we not consider it Islamic? Just because Obama says it's not Islamic, it's not exactly. It doesn't. He's not an authority on this. I think that the people who are living Islam are an authority on this, and a hell of a lot of them think that this is Islamic, that this is what Islam is supposed to do. And the problem that you have with this is that it's almost impossible to find in the Quran anything that they're doing which you can say is un-Islamic. You can't. And so ISIS is really the end result of decades of preaching this absolute insanity. That's a problem.
The attribution of cause is troublesome. I mean, why is say Jordan so peaceful or whatever or even say I don't know, Singapore, Turkey, whatever. When these things, Syria and Iraq, are having these wildcat, crazed movements, and the impulse behind them isn't religion per se. Let me draw maybe a parallel that might not sound very good, but like, why did the U.S. Black Civil Rights Movement need a whole bunch of Christian ministers involved with? Right. The religion is an organizational structure, a way of cohering people into some kind of common cause and so on, where the real struggle underlying it, racial equality in the U.S. case, and over in say Iraq and Syria, well, foreign domination, oppression, and so on. So I think the religion is a byproduct or associated phenomenon as opposed to this fundamental drive behind it.
Well, religion is nothing more than a political excuse for a few men to keep gullible people down. That's religion.
Well, I think that to excuse it as some sort of response to our current dictatorship, etc., in certain parts of this area, is wrong. You know, ISIS doesn't come from 6 months ago, and it doesn't come from the invasion of Iraq. ISIS comes from the ideals set out by Al-Qutb, and the Muslim Brotherhood, which were founded a long, long time before any of this happened. And just because they have evolved into even more violent strands and breeds now doesn't mean that this isn't where they come from, and that this is exactly where they come from. They come from a Salafi interpretation of the Quran, and you would have a very hard time finding how they are actually wrong about anything they're saying they're right about. You could say they're not Islamic, but what the fuck do you know? They are. They are Muslims. They are living Islam. In fact, in their view, their most pure sense of Islamic living. It's not for you to say that they're not, or anybody else to say that they're not Islamic. We don't stand as atheists. We don't stand for when Christians say this isn't, true, a real Christian, etc. This isn't what real Christianity is about. We don't, the true Scotsman argument doesn't hold any water for us. But for some reason, it does when we talk about Islam. I find this to be absolutely insulting, frankly. I find it to be insulting to my intelligence, let alone to the things that these people are doing in the name of what they're saying they're doing in it. So yeah, I think it also misunderstands the enemy in a really dangerous way. You have to understand your enemy when you're at war, and we are certainly at war. And you can't just say, well, they're not this and this and this, because I don't think that it jives with my own particular view of what Islam should and shouldn't be. I think that's an idiotic thing to do. Much as I like Obama, and I do, I think it's just a really stupid thing to say. Now, I understand why he's saying it, because he can't go around saying, well, we're at war with Islam, he'll have a global war he just doesn't want, and I don't want. So he has to be a politician, I understand that. But other people are saying it, and that's really stupid. That really irks me, frankly.
Okay. Well, I pressed it further, but it looks like George has something to jump in here with.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, by the way, where the hell's Quantum? What's he doing? Are you still there?
Yeah, I haven't gone away.
Okay.
Well, if we enter this topic, perhaps we should go from left to right and ask all if we got something more to say about this topic as an end sentence, and then go to the next topic.
Okay, what is the next topic?
Well, I had another idea.
Okay.
And it's a funny one. It was it's about Fox News, because that's always funny.
Already there, you don't have to say anything else.
Yeah, you just made me giggle.
It was I hope because it was a few days ago. I saw it and I did a topic about it in the atheist discussion community in Google Plus. Basically, Fox News, there were some cheerleaders, and I forgot which state they were, but the discussion was that they wanted to pray at the beginning of a football match.
Mm.
But of course, because of the separation of church and state, the discussion is that they could not do that.
Mm.
Because that would mean that you are putting a religion in front of a crowd, which may insult a group of people. So that the school decided, because of the secularism in the United States Constitution, they decided no more prayers at the beginning of football matches. So those cheerleaders decided on themselves, prior the football match to hold hands, the cheerleaders to hold hands, and do a prayer by themselves. And what happened then that the people in the crowd all stood up and joined the cheerleaders in prayer. And the discussion basically is that illegal or not? And and of course, when you see the topic in Fox News, it's funny. It's I don't know what the name of the blonde lady is, because she was all for it, and you're defending the faith, and and she even quoted the Constitution part, which said this. About the separation of church and state, and she said it in such a way as if it looked at what they were doing was protecting the Constitution that way by these girls for praying at the beginning of a match. So that was the funny part. But basically, when it comes down to it's still an official school event, and if the school gets money funded by the state, then the school is obligated, of course, to separate the church and the state in its events. So, and then the discussion, but the discussion ended with in Google Plus on their own, so without the school knowing about it. Is it then still illegal?
Yes. I mean, let me ask you this, just for a second. Imagine they had taken out a chicken and slit its neck and poured the blood on it on some sort of makeshift altar and called down the power of Satan to bless their game. Would that be illegal? Would these people be offended?
No, because Satan is the only religion.
Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, it's clear that it's illegal. It's illegal because it's an event sponsored by and held by the school on school grounds. I imagine this wasn't at a private function.
No, it was at the football field. So
yeah, so if it's there's no difference between that and some sort of demonic ritual, which calls forth the power of another wuju. It's all the same. And how would they have felt had those cheerleaders said, you know what? Well, we've sort of founded a coven of witches, and we're all pagan Wiccans now, and we're going to call Gaia, Earth Mother Goddess, the power thereof, to bless her. I mean, those Christians in the crowd would have been incensed. They would have demanded that these cheerleaders are arrested. So not only is it illegal, but all those people are fucking hypocrites, is what it amounts to. And that's something I just won't tolerate. So yeah, it's illegal, and they should be charged for it. Yeah, absolutely. I don't care if they're young. I absolutely don't care what their age is. It was illegal.
Exactly, because that was the funny part, that the Fox News lady, the anchor lady, basically quoted a part of the Constitution which said that the church, and I don't know the exact quote because I'm of course not an American, but basically that part says that in state-sponsored events you have to keep religion away from it, because the state as a personality is secular. And basically the Fox News lady made it look like they were defending secularism, because of course they were not.
Yeah, no, I know, but yeah, I give the same amount of respect to a Fox News lady as I do to a talking
snake
or online or something.
What I don't get is why is this not covered by freedom of speech and freedom of expression?
Because it's the state. I mean, imagine if you go to your local council and they start a prayer to begin the session. Instead of praying to Jesus, they pray to Satan, or they pray to the god Vishnu, or the hell, they pray to Kali and say that we should all sacrifice human beings by garroting them. I mean, what would you do? Is that freedom of speech? Are you not putting forward the idea that the state is endorsing this? This is part of the reason why religion is so entrenched in American society, because people think that the state actually endorses Christianity. They're absolutely 100% wrong, but they're so stupid and ignorant and fucking lowbrow that they don't even know this.
Well, okay, so if you give the implication that the state is saying something representative, then I can see why that might be a problem. But it doesn't surely that doesn't mean that you can't pray at any public event just because it's been sponsored by the state. As long as you make it clear that
pray. You cannot get up on stage and use the event to pray. If you want to pray privately to yourself, fine. Nobody's stopping you. But you cannot endorse it or have it on the grounds in any public, visible way as part of the event. And for the entire crowd to stand up and hold hands and pray, that's against the law.
Yep, that's true.
Once again, what would people be saying right now if they had stood up and prayed to Satan?
Well, that's one of the
Fox News lady. Would she have said, "Oh, that's fine by me," or would she have had a fucking tizzy fit, which would have lasted for 10 years on YouTube as the
Of course she would have. Of course she would have. That's part of the reason why a lot of the Luciferian churches or whatever do it anytime the state is caught with its pants down endorsing something like a Ten Commandments, something like that. What you really do is open up the floodgates to any religion doing that. So anytime a city has a Ten Commandments, something like that, on their front lawn, then there's nothing stopping taxpayers from saying, I want my Luciferian statue right next to it, and that's exactly what they do.
Well,
That's what they should do.
What I don't get is, doesn't this imply that anything that is state-sponsored can not be politicized at all, and you can't express any sort of ideology, religious or otherwise?
You just can't. I mean, an individual senator can have his individual beliefs, but if he wanted to go back to his state and say, I'm going to make it so that everybody in my school says a Christian prayer in the morning, that's where he's not allowed to do that.
I want to say something, because some other events also happened in the last few weeks in Florida, and I'm very bad with names, so I don't recall all names. But in Florida, a Christian group wanted to spread out pamphlets at school, and there was protest against it. But the judge said, okay, they are allowed. So a satanic group said, okay, if they can do that, we are allowed to do that too. So they brought out a little, I don't recall the exact thing, but there was they had a PDF which basically gave a presentation of satanic beliefs for children with little color books and so. And
I saw that.
Yeah. That actually only reinforces my belief that half this out there are actually atheists who are just doing it to piss off the religious people.
And somewhere else in the United States there was a statue, a religious statue put down, and another satanic group thought, that's nice. Let's put a satanic statue next to it also. So
it's actually still in the process of being approved, but there's no legal reason they can't do it now. And it's a statue of Satan with the goat's head, etc., sitting down on a throne, and their presentation of it with two little children sitting on the lap and like looking up admiringly at Satan.
That would be awesome. That would be so awesome.
I would, you know what? Just to spite the idiots out there, I would say, okay, go for it. You know, if you're going to allow other Christians to spread their crap, then sure, go for it. You know, I'm all for it.
And of course, last week you had that Black Mass.
Yeah.
Yeah, because for people who didn't see it, there was a lot of issue, because they said the leader of that satanic cult was a child molester, but that's all crap. He did something in the past, but he's not listed anymore, so it couldn't have been that bad. But basically, the Christians held meetings in church in a state building. So that satanic sect said, well, if the Christians are allowed to hold meetings in the state building, we are allowed to do that too. And there was even a video about it on Fox News with a Catholic priest who apparently often comes on Fox News, and he said all kinds of things that is bad. And
Yeah, I saw it.
It's good to see this happening, basically.
Yeah, I actually think that little conspiracy theory, but I actually think that some atheists push. I have friends who are pagans, etc., who push them to do these things when these cases come up, because I don't think these people, these Wiccans, etc., be as blatantly obvious about it as they are being half the time. When I think some people are encouraging them every now and then, saying, "Hey, wouldn't it be a good idea?" Which I'm all for. If that is the case, I'm all for it. That's how you get things across in politics, and this is all about politics.
Yeah, and you all know Jacqueline Glinna, I assume.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You probably see that video she did about 2 weeks ago, and she took 2 days of the week and one day, and she was trying to raise money for a children's hospital, and in the first day she stood there holding up a sign that she was doing it for a religious organization, and the other day it was basically the same sign, and this time it was not for a religious organization, it was for an atheist organization.
Yeah.
And she showed all the remarks she got during them standing there, and it's funny. In the end, she said that the atheists gave more than the Christians.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
It's a funny experiment.
Yeah, it is a good experiment. But again, I think the problem with America is that it's so entrenched that people think that it is a state position, that Christianity is the law of the land for some.
But really, how can you blame them? Just look at the dollar bills.
Yeah, the dollar bills doesn't have in God we trust. Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, but it's also got Masonic stuff all over it. So why would they think that the Masonic order is not also the law?
Because of the Illuminati, man.
Yeah. Well, they actually used to. Masonic lodges used to be quite a popular thing back in the day, and not just during George Washington time, etc. But lodges and stuff were quite popular at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, even. Not necessarily Masonic, but they're derivatives of them, etc. And of course, the Masons were always popular for a while too. So it's not as if that didn't occur as well, but not so much as obviously religion.
But I did some research on that. I think it was last year somewhere. That little part on the money in God we trust, that wasn't always on the money. That only happened somewhere in the 1920s, I think. There was a whole discussion about it. But now Christian people think it has always been on the money, and
that they're idiots. Again, they're morons. I'm gonna mince no bones here whatsoever. They're idiots. They're fucking idiots. They're throwbacks, okay? And anybody who takes their position is a throwback. I have no pity for them whatsoever. They have access to the greatest technological feat of knowledge in the entire history of mankind. Everybody has access to it now. I mean, unless you are living in some sort of cut-off bubble, farm or something that you don't have electronic devices. Everybody has access to the internet in America, and they don't use it to learn. They use it just to reinforce their idiocy. I have no sympathy for them. I have no will to see them around me in any way whatsoever.
I often jokingly say to people when I talk about these subjects, because I'm not an American, I'm not from the United States, I'm a European, and some of these things I know more about American history than Americans themselves.
Yeah, and you probably do, and that's just shameful. It's absolutely shameful. And if somebody tells me something like, well, it's just not my thing. Well, then you're an idiot. If it's not your thing, you're an idiot. That's my view. And you know what? If somebody tells me that I'm being hard ass, I'll throw it right back in their face. Don't judge me. It's not my thing. Don't judge me. It's all good. Be a fucking moron. No, I've had it with this sort of thing. I am just no longer in the mood to acquiesce to this sort of don't judge mentality.
I think they should start teaching the American children that Columbus was the first king of America.
Please don't. They have a hard enough time as it is, and I have no idea.
Look. I will tell you a story. I had one of my best friends still today. 20 years ago, he had a girlfriend. Well, short-lived girlfriend. We lived in D.C. and he was driving around. She was. They were both from American University, and he was driving downtown, and she asked what the big white building was. It was Congress. And he was dumbfounded. He was stunned. He was a poli-sci major at the time. He was stunned. Yeah, her name was like Mindy or something. He was stunned. He was like, "How could you not know this? You are a student at American University." She said something on the lines of, "Well, I don't know. It's not the thing I'm into. I'm just not into that." He dumped her right away.
Of course not.
Yeah, but she's a student at American University, okay? White, upper middle class, really expensive university, okay? It doesn't matter where you come from on the socioeconomic scale. You have idiots across the board. That's the real problem. Because our culture accepts that for some reason. You can be a student at American University at one of the top universities in the country and not know what Congress looks like. It's mind blowing.
I have no doubts. That the vast majority of Europeans know far more about America and American politics and just anything in general than most Americans do. At least that was my experience when I was there, and I have a bunch of European friends, and it's in a dismal state right now, isn't it? It's kind of not good. I have a couple friends that just general topics.
I've met tons of ignorant Europeans, but the fact is that they're ignorant in less ways, and in certain ways they're more knowledgeable, and in certain ways that count more. Sometimes.
I don't even mind their political views. I mind that they know objective facts about American history, and the fact that they don't know that kind of scares me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I disagree with a lot of European politics, but at least when you're talking to the people, they're not going to ask you something so far off the mark that they should know it. That they should just know it.
Before we move on, I have two things I want to say. The first thing is, I just want to see if there is any hope for humanity in this chat. You have lived on this planet for a lot of years. Can you tell which way it is spinning?
I think it's always spinning upwards, but with serious setbacks along the way. That's always the way it's been. So I think and there is never a time where that isn't happening. There's never been a time. People think of certain golden ages of the golden age of Greece and the golden age in Rome, and so on, and even the golden age in the 19th century of science and learning. Well, I think that these are, in retrospect, things that we, selective memory. I think that they've always been this way.
The world.
My answer is, and it also say that there's a well remarked upon anti-intellectual strain within American culture. and I think it's probably H.L. Mencken or some such who's noted for having said so early on. And last but not least, to maybe flesh out a bit of the yes, Christian law, whatever. There are rather disturbing movements called theonomy, dominionism, and Christian Reconstructionism that are worth taking note of.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree, and there are serious problems. Yeah.
I wanted to add the world spins from the west to the east.
What, you wonder about that, or what?
No, I know the world spins from the west to the east, so from left to right. Most people, without thinking, say it spins from the right to the left, but it's the other way around. So.
Yeah, well, most people, I'm sure many Americans don't. Well, look, hey, I recounted this story the other day online. When I was in DC in college with my brother, we both worked at National Geographic as interns, and we were actually in the press office part of that, and this was in 1991. And every year, National Geographic has a survey that polls people on their knowledge of geography. And when I was there, 1 out of 7 high school graduates in America did not know where America was on the world map. And it was like 1 out of 4 did not know where Europe was. Like France, and like entities in Europe like France or England got like 1 out of 5, 1 out of 3, etc. 1 out of 2, something like that, or 1 out of 3 did not know where Japan was. And this was astounding to me. This was absolutely astounding to me and my brother and I both. We were just blown away. And we were the ones actually who had to write the press release for it because we were interested in the public relations department.
This is where I get bonus points for knowing like 10 Downing Street, 24 Sussex Drive, Los Pinos, and La Moneda, and the Casa Rosada, and so on. But or where Ouagadougou and I don't know, Kuala Lumpur and so on are. There's a lot of the geography and so on is reinforced by the very parochial sort of news, I think, in the U.S.
Yeah, well, I cannot. I mean, how many times have you heard that America is the freest nation in the world? And that is just a lie. And Americans believe this. This is sacrosanct to them. But they think that America is the freest nation in the world. Well, sometimes it isn't. And they don't know this. They have absolutely no concept that this could actually sometimes not be true. Granted, America, in many respects, is one of the freest nations in the world. But there is no freest nation, and I would absolutely contest the notion that it is the freest nation in the entire world. It isn't. I'm not saying that it necessarily even should be, but I'm just saying that the mere fact that Americans think that this is true means they're idiots. Okay, the people who believe this are idiots. They know nothing. They know absolutely nothing. I understand why they are religious Christians. They have the same parochial view as, some person in a desert in this area of the world 2,000 years ago. They know absolutely nothing outside of their 20-mile bubble. Nothing. And that's a real danger, especially because they vote. And I went off on this the other day as well. About voting and being ignorant, and I just, it's a real problem in America, definitely, especially because it's a world power.
Well, do you know who Harper or Abbott or Cameron are? I wonder.
No, I don't think that they do. I don't think most Americans do.
So, would I mourn Jack Lawton dying and get into Stegomania? Oh dear.
Shall we go to the last topic?
Sure. Wait, what happened to Quantum, man? I thought he's running the show. He's supposed to be running the show.
I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I just some of these topics I don't have much to contribute to.
So pick one that you do. I like listening to you.
Well, what is that supposed to mean?
No, I mean, so we've been talking for like, what, an hour or something now? No, I've been talking nonstop. I want to hear what he's got to say.
But we love listening to you, Nathan.
No, I don't want to listen to me. I want to listen to other people for a change.
Anyway, let's go on to the final topic. Did you want to explain your point of view? You made a video about something, George?
Yeah, I did, because it came up a little while ago. A lot of times I see in Google Plus and on the YouTube comment section that a lot of theists think that atheists. I hear somebody in the background.
Not me. Is it me?
I am no, I don't know. Oh, I'll try to talk over it. So, basically, a lot of people, theists and such, seem to now it's gone. Seem to think that atheists per se all are for abortion, and I got it in a discussion about it because that's not true. Because I'm an atheist, and morally I am against abortion, and I haven't been making videos for the.
You sexist pig! Sorry. No, go ahead.
I haven't been making videos for over a year, so I made 2 videos or 3 now to basically get into it. So I made a video about my idea. It's not a really great video. You have to see it. I'm still getting into it, but I was explaining my viewpoint that morally I am against abortion, and I explained my reasons for that. So allow me to explain, because you might get a lot of flack for if it's not good explained well. I must say. Why I am basically against abortion is because when I was a teen, the discussion rose in my country and in other countries if abortion should be legal or not. And there are some good points to say that when a woman is pregnant, you wait till the baby is developed and has a brain and a nervous system, and after that you do not allow the baby to be aborted anymore. But basically I have a problem with that, because as an atheist I do not believe in anything supernatural. I do not believe in gods, and because I do not believe in anything supernatural, I also do not believe in a soul. I do not believe in eternal life. So I had to make a decision what is important for me, and I thought, well, sentient life is something which is important. Our self-awareness, knowing that we are alive, and recognizing ourselves in the mirror, things like that. And I think that is very important. But when you make that decision, you have to come up with and you want to copy that under the abortion discussion. Then you have to make a decision at what point do you say when is a human sentient. And of course you can say, well, the moment a baby in the womb has developed a brain and a nervous system, you could say it's sentient, but first we do not know that. And basically I personally think it is nothing more than a replacement for the soul discussion, because a lot of some Christians agree that you could abort a baby when it's not yet have a brain and a nervous system, but after that it has a soul, they say. So you shouldn't do that then, because then you would be destroying God's creation, blah blah blah. I say in this discussion, at which point do I say that it is important? For sentience, I simply say, and I take the point, when is the human unique? And that's for me, at the moment, the baby has its own DNA, so that's almost immediately after conception. And of course, I have moral problems with it if it's later on in the development. But I also say because I am also a reasonable and logical person, that I 100% agree that, for instance, when a woman is raped and she doesn't know she's pregnant, then you should be able to abort, because it's in a huge intrusion, of course, for the female's body, and she'll have mental problems enough already to deal with rape. So at that point, I take a step back and then I say, okay, I'm morally against it, because I think the point is. It's very difficult to explain this, but because of the human uniqueness, at the point of it having unique DNA, is for me the point I say this is a human being. But because of the am I making sense so far? Because I got to
Well, I can jump in here if I may. I'm interested to ask why you think conception is particularly special in that sense. From a moral standpoint, there doesn't really seem to be anything special about it. Conception is a chemical thing. It's a biochemical event, but to me it doesn't seem any more special than anything else. And in terms of morality, I would have thought things like self-awareness, sentience, consciousness would be far more important.
Yes, but for me that's nothing more than a replacement for a soul discussion.
I have to say, by the way, I am somewhat in agreement with you. I support abortion fully for the woman, absolutely. I just don't happen to like it. I don't happen to like the idea, but I realize that these are for emotional reasons, not for rational ones. And so when it comes to law, when it comes to whether or not a woman can choose, my emotions have to take a back seat. And I may not like that. Sometimes I don't. But I recognize the fact that this should be the way it is. So yeah, I agree with you, but again, I realize it's an emotional response, and
exactly.
Well, I mean, why not? I don't understand why you can't arbitrarily have the point before conception. Why can't you, say, treat every sperm as being some sort of
I think no.
Sperm does not have its own unique DNA. A sperm cell or an egg cell on its own cannot become a human. It needs to have the X and Y chromosomes from the XX and the XY chromosomes of.
Maybe a sperm can't, but what about adult bone marrow? I mean, that you could theoretically make a clone of a human using adult stem cells.
I'll explain this. No, because people do couch this in religious discussions, or as you said about DNA, about uniqueness in a sense. I see it very differently. Being against abortion is, in a sense, trying to put some value on the idea of life in a world where, frankly, it doesn't exist. I think this has everything to do with why people look to religion, the fear of death, etc. Because the world is a violent place. It is a brutal place, and there is no sanctity of life in the real world. Life is expendable. Look at the natural world. Almost nothing in the natural world dies of old age. Okay, it's killed. Almost everything in the natural world dies because something else kills it, and that, frankly, used to be the way of human nature as well. I mean, it used to be the way we used to live. we tried to make something better out of that, and we tried to make something better than just living amongst predators all the time. And the idea of keeping life sanctified in some sense, I think, is integral to trying to maintain an illusion necessary to create a better society. I'm not saying that abortion shouldn't be legal. It should be completely legal across the board. But what I'm saying is the emotion from that is understandable, because it is one of the few things that, in a sense, makes us human.
And exactly, and that's why I say in the video I made that I find the potential of it becoming a fully human being, a fully sentient human being, an important point in the development of a fetus. And for me, that point logically is at the moment it has its own DNA, and that's right after conception, basically. And that's why I also do not have a problem with cloning. I may have a problem with experimenting with little egg cells which have full DNA, but okay, I can basically live with it, even though I do not agree with it. But the moment it has its own DNA, for me, is important, because at that point it has all the potential to become a fully functional human being.
But we don't base our system of ethics and morality on things like biochemical events. And I mean, I thought as human beings we have an understanding of things like empathy and the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes. The idea that you wouldn't do to someone else what you would not expect them to do back to you, a rather universal ethical law. So why? I don't understand what the moral significance of this particular event is. It has a very important chemical significance, but what's the moral significance of this? And I would argue there isn't any.
I'm with Quantum. I'm with Quantum on this.
For me, it is the continuation of the human species. If you fully make a new DNA strand, how do you say that in English, and you put it in an egg cell, and that can become a human being, I also say you 100% have the responsibility for it becoming a fully functional human being.
But why? Why can't you just use the same argument with a stem cell? You know, you could theoretically, maybe not with current technology,
and it's actually been done. But I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I agree with that viewpoint. I'm just saying that the response is understandable to me, even though I still think it should be legal. I don't have the response that it shouldn't be legal. Is what I'm saying.
No, and that's also what I say. For me, it's a moral point that I choose that, but the discussion after that, when should you abort, I look at that logically and with reason, and I do not go against it. You won't see me bombing abortion clinics and stuff like that. For me, it's basically what you said. It's for me an emotional point.
Yeah, I think it is for everybody. Look, you know, let's turn the tables for a second. Let's not go into abortion. Let's talk about euthanasia. Most liberals, most atheists support euthanasia. They're not exactly happy about it. All right, it's not like a joyous occasion. All right, it's a sad occasion. Everybody recognizes this, even people who think it should be legal, which I think it should be. But the very idea of opposing euthanasia is, in a sense, a human one, because it comes from this human maintaining of an illusion of a better world, where a life is more valuable than it actually is. It's one thing that keeps people going. A lot of the times, you know, why is it special when people die in a huge tragedy? Well, in nature, it isn't Nature can give fuck all about people.
It's just waste of time for nature.
Yeah, it's not even a blink in the eye for nature. We don't matter, and that is very true. That's one thing that atheism cannot.
I would disagree that euthanasia has to be emotional. You could come up with very rational reasons why euthanasia is reasonable. Oh, anyway, Nadia wants to say
No,
something.
I didn't say it's not reasonable. I think it is reasonable.
But
I think that being opposed to it is not unreasonable. It's human.
I think Nadia's been trying to say something for a while. So.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there are 3 or 4 tricky points to hit here. One of the first ones is this moment of conception, the unique genome, etc., has a few different problems. One of the first ones is, of course, that a lot of times these embryos split long after the genome is there. You can have identical twins, identical triplets, etc. And even more disturbingly, fraternal twins apparently frequently seem to merge into a single embryo from multiple embryos. And at that point, you don't have a unique genome associated with a person. These chimeras are, demonstrably people. They walk, they talk. Not even notably any physically different from an ordinary person, but some internal organ will test with one karyotype or genotype. I said karyotype. That's the sex, right? According to the genes, and
Yes.
Other organs or tissues will test with different ones, and so it goes on. At some point, differentiation this stops working, but in the meantime, you have trouble maintaining a distinct life, and you end up also having trouble of essentially defining what life is, where in terms of multicellular organisms, the cell is not the boundary; it's a collection of cells, and this gives you some of this chimerism issue that comes about. And next is that the notion of this sanctity of continuation of species and so on is relatively well challenged, essentially by a similar argument to euthanasia as a whole, for essentially the species as a whole. There are things literally like the voluntary human extinction movement, antinatalists and ethalists and so on, who actually make sophisticated moral arguments, like David Benatar's little book there that I linked you to, and so on, that indicate that at least under some circumstances it is best not to be born. And considering that, when deciding whether to continue a pregnancy or not is rather crucial. And
I do want to clarify something. I am not in agreement with that we should categorize the event by some sort of genetic moment. I'm saying I understand why people would do such a thing, trying to make life so special and choose a defining moment for life. I understand why they do it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying I understand why, and I think it's entirely human to do so. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, last but not least, the process is a little bit more than just pop out a child. It also, wrecks someone's body. And you're essentially opposing some form of. I would say it is, in a number of senses, literally kind of like a mutilation or something, or a violation or something like on that order. particularly when not otherwise consented to, and so on. I mean, it's kind of like the difference between, someone showing up, well, sorry if it sounds prurient, but at like a BDSM club or something, and getting whipped versus, someone getting captured by a kidnapper and being whipped and tortured, right? One case, yeah, it's just fine. Other one, the consent was missing. It's pretty bad, and the effect is not negligible. It does tear up I guess the reproductive organs and other aspects of the body pretty badly, and the pregnant person is in for a relatively traumatic time if they're not otherwise consenting. So I would be very cautious about all this balance of all this thing. I mean, when you have someone carrying out the analogous forms of effects on the body, you would actually consider lethal force a legitimate means of defending them as a third party, right? This is not so unlike, even even granting that it's actually life, you would have a justification of abortion on that from that point of view. Okay.
I didn't get what you mean with the lethal force part.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means.
Well, if you saw something like a rape or attempted rape in progress, lethal force would be justified to defend the third party, the victim of the rape, whatever, from being raped, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's...
What does that have to do with abortion?
I went through like a 5-minute...
I know, but I still understand. I'm sorry, you confounded me there. I didn't understand. I'm sorry.
I went through like a 5-minute or longer justification of how forced childbirth was analogous.
Right, but I'm not saying that there should be forced childbirths. I said I'm against that. I was very explicit. I don't know how else I can be. I said abortion should be legal across the board. Period. End of sentence. I never said that it shouldn't.
Yeah, it was more of a response to George's notions.
No, but Nicola, he also, George also said, as far as I remember, that his emotional ties take a back seat. That he thinks it should be legal.
Yes, I agree. I agree that it should be legal, but I cannot morally justify, not morally justified because it's an emotional subject. And I didn't get around to mention it, but I have the same response to euthanasia. I am morally against it, but I can logically and reasonably agree with it.
Yeah, I am kind of ambiguous on that actually. I think it should be legal. But I thought it should be legal for quite a long time before the debate was ever even considered in the United States.
Just for clarification, is your argument against abortion, George, an emotional one?
It is an emotional one because I think the potential for every human being is very important for it being allowed to live.
If you acknowledge that it's an emotional response, then do you also acknowledge that it may be irrational because of that?
Yes, I know, and I said that in my video. In the video, if you look at my video, I also say that I know it may be an irrational thing based on emotion, but besides that, I take the reasonable response and I support it. So I know it's an emotional response, but I can. But if I would only say that I am 100% for abortion, I would be lying to everyone because that's not true. That's not how I feel about it. So that's why I say I am against abortion because of my own moral concept of it.
Yeah, I'm like I was saying earlier. I'm not happy about war either. I'm morally against war, but
That,
I support it in certain cases, and I support it across the board in certain cases. I can be morally against something, but just see the reality and practicality of it in everyday life. It's the same exact thing.
I'll give you.
I just can't comprehend. I mean, I find it very difficult to comprehend
Let me give you an example.
How people can have an emotional tie to this sort of thing. Because
Let me give you an
do you
example.
feel guilty when you squish a bug or something like that, or do you eat meat, for instance?
But
I do.
that's something totally different because we are omnivores. We are supposed
But
to.
no. But how, I don't understand how. Why is it that we don't feel emotional ties to the animals that we eat? We feel an emotional tie to a single cell.
Because I can escape my nature.
But I find it. In the absence of some sort of indoctrination or religious upbringing, I don't understand how it's possible to even. Some people might in a completely consistent way find it impossible. Feel guilty when they kill.
No, wait a minute. No, I think you're. No, I think that's wrong. You don't need religious indoctrination to feel an emotional attachment to a child inside a mother's womb. Animals feel this, okay? This is across the board. This is an instinct. This is a human and animal instinct. Look at the ties for a mother to her children in the animal world, okay? You better not fuck with a polar bear kid. The mother is going to absolutely shred you to pieces.
And of course, you take a polar bear as an example.
Yeah, I would, because I'm looking at it right now. But this is uncontested. This has nothing to do with religion. This is instinctual. So for people to be against abortion is not. It is an irrational. It's an instinctual response, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying I am. I don't operate that way, but I understand people who do, because it is natural in a sense.
But surely in that case it would be the mother that would be. I mean, I can understand why the mother would feel this sort.
But and the father. And the
father. Okay, and indeed the father.
And in a community of others who start caring about one another as if they're kith and kin, you will get that sort of, a slightly subdued reaction, but on the same kind of response. That's why we care more that when humans die than when animals die, because it's an instinctual thing. Okay, this is what happens in a community. The community is what? It's an extended family.
It's also true that you care more about your own family and can be completely apathetic to other people. So from a third-party point of view, why would you necessarily care about an arbitrary embryo that's only just been conceived?
Well, I don't. I said I don't. I don't operate this way. But I think I understand why some do, because, again, it is an illusion that some people maintain about the sanctity of life. It's an instinctual thing that our lives are more than just stuff of regular matter. It's not true. It's an irrational emotional response, but that is what the kind of illusion we try to maintain. We all have illusions we try to maintain. That is a very human, across the board type of illusion that we try to maintain. Even ISIS tries to maintain some sort of illusion. So this is a normal human response. Again, it's not my response. I understand why some do respond that way. I'm not justifying.
I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I'm very pro-life, and that this, advocacy or whatever of it means, or sanctity of it, I characterize as quality, not quantity. Go ahead, George.
Yes, I gave a specific example in my video, which I haven't mentioned yet, which is one of the reasons I actually took that early point, saying I thought the point when it has its own DNA, I think is important. I once saw a documentary, and I think it was of the BBC, of a woman that preferred to have sex unprotected, and she had 10 abortions because of it. And I thought that was utterly disgusting, because abortions out of convenience I totally do not agree with. I think that
Yeah, I think that as well. I do have an emotional reaction to that. Even though I still think it should be legal, I do have an emotional reaction.
Okay, so do you get her a chastity belt, or
No,
force her
I
to
just
sterilize,
said,
or
I
force
just
her to raise
said,
her children, or?
I just said it should be legal. I just said that. How you can't describe things to me that I have not said. I just said it should be legal. I find it personally repulsive, but it should be legal. You know, I don't know. I don't know how you could argue with what I just said. You know, I thought I was
Well, it's
clear.
George. Really? Okay.
yeah, and I know it. I know it's an emotional, but after that I take a step back and I look at it rationally. So I emotionally cannot 100% agree with a woman that has taken 10 abortions because she's too lazy to put a condom on the man's penis or take the pill. I can't agree with that. Absolutely, that's a pure emotional response.
Yeah, I agree. You know, look. You know, I find certain forms of gluttony to be absolutely repulsive. But do I think it should be illegal? No. You know, I do have a very visceral response to certain things, which I think still should be legal. You know, I don't particularly like seeing swastikas anywhere. You know, being Jewish, having a mother who was born in the concentration camps, but do I think it should be illegal? No. I have a visceral response to it, but do I think it should be illegal? No, I never said that it should be. So the same goes with abortion. I don't think that it should be. Also, I don't have as much of a visceral response to abortion as I do to some other things, but either way, I understand people who do, but I still think it should be legal.
Yeah, and I know it's a difficult subject. That's why I made a video about it. I've got who told me to make the video. I forgot his name. We asked him if he could be here to talk about this week, but he didn't. He didn't have time for it, I believe. So that's a shame, because I know it's a very difficult subject, and there might be exceptions which could make me change my mind, but I haven't come up with any of it yet.
Yeah, look, you know, I think that it should be legal to prosecute. I mean, if a woman's about to give birth, you know, 2 days from the time she wants to get it aborted, well, that, you know, at that point, you have to say, well, what's the best? You have to come to some sort of, you know, best kind of decision. So no, there are exceptions, but you know that sort of thing almost never happens. These are extreme cases, and I don't judge these kind of things on those kind of extreme cases on any subject whatsoever. You know, I think even though I have such a visceral emotional tie when it comes to abortion, I understand some people who do, and I understand the human need for this concept that there is sanctity in life even in the womb. I think in a lot of ways it's silly, but I understand where it comes from. You just have to look at nature itself, and it's not that hard to understand. It's
Well,
just that we are better than animals, or we hope.
well, riddle me this: how do you sanctify a life by, damning it to poverty and
I
and
agree.
neglect in a lot of ways?
I agree, and I think I think religious people are some of the most hypocritical in the entire world. I mean, that's one reason I oppose religion so vociferously. You'll get no argument from me on that point, none. You know, but that's to me that's got nothing to do with how people instinctively feel about abortion. Some people. I would not count myself amongst them.
And basically, when you look at it, if you would be a religious person, and you say it's morally because of your religious texts, well, when I look at an argument like that from an atheist perspective, I 100% know, 99% know, that he's basing his moral decisions on a reasonable assumption he took based on the text and believe in God, etc., etc. So I do not think it is wrong to have a moral position on things like that, because after all, morals are part of what makes us human. Our moral being and how we look at things. That's just how nature is. That's part of our nature. So it's not strange people take a moral position on subjects like this.
Yeah, but again, I understand. I'm just saying that we should, at the same time, I mean, as you do, rise above those feelings and try to think about it logically. Try to advance and evolve in certain respects. We can't go around continuing to be animals. The irony really is that the people who have an absolute opposition to abortion are doing it for literally instinctual reasons on the onset, which is based on animal nature, which is something that by opposing abortion they are trying to oppose. They're trying to say that we're better than animals. But the fact is, it's an animal reaction, and the people who are pro-abortion, who have risen above it by thinking about it rationally, are the ones actually who are going beyond the instinctual level. It's the complete irony of the situation.
We are animals.
Yes, we are, but we try to be better than animals in our moral, activities towards one another. And the people who are, ironically, who react negatively towards abortion and try to justify it with all sorts of moralistic arguments, especially religious ones, are actually the one, by saying that we're better than animals, that we shouldn't kill children in the womb, etc. They are actually the ones responding to an animal response, whereas the ones who are thinking rationally about it and may not be happy instinctually about abortion, but are thinking about it rationally, are the ones who are rising above it by saying it should be permissible. It's a complete irony, but that's just the way it is. That's what, in a sense, religion has done. It's crazy, but it's true.
Exactly. Quantum,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to ask Quantum if he had something to say. Though.
Yeah, I think the quality versus quantity trade-off is should be very heavily reconsidered. For that matter, very heavily changed toward quality, literally to the point that well, if we just so happen to go extinct to maintain quality of life, then so be it. We have ensuring the best lifetime, best quality of life, so when possible, is
Listen, I think only
literally where it's going.
yeah, no, I think only extremists will use that as an example. I don't think any rational person, even if they're reacting irrationally to abortion, I don't think any rational person is going to be arguing that abortion could eliminate the entire human species. We all know that most people don't get an abortion. The human population is growing by leaps and bounds. Everybody accepts this. Nobody's really using that argument that it's going to, annihilate the human species. I mean, people who use that argument don't even. Nobody should take them seriously. This is an idiotic sort of argument. Not one worthy of consideration.
Yeah, some people hold the same fail reasoning on homosexuality, thinking that if you are if you allow homosexuality, the world will die out, which is stupid.
It's not even worth listening to. This is the number of people who are homosexual is an extreme minority in comparison with the general population. Even if it's a quarter of the people, with the amount of people, it would take thousands of years, even if it was a majority of people, or like 51% at this point. And the amount of people who get abortions, even a la carte abortions, or just one-off abortions, is so minute compared to the rest of the population. It's just not going to affect statistics in any way whatsoever, apart from their personal human rights. That's different.
But the idea was that the force of the quality argument is so great, it actually would withstand a legitimate sort of argument that something would cause human rights to go extinct, whatever. It's better to have, in many ways, a graceful exit. High quality of life is, well, new people aren't born or whatever, than to, suffer in misery and so on. What sanctifies life is the quality of it, the well-being and joy we experience as we go through it, if we get any of it, that is. And what sullies it is, the suffering and experience and the harm done to us. So, from the point of view of someone thinking about abortion, I have to, seriously consider the judgment of what kind of life outcome will arise from it, given, the resources and so on, how well, the person is able to parent, and so on and so forth.
Right. I don't agree. I don't disagree with that.
No, me neither. Because suppose you have a baby with a serious illness, and might not be living long after it's being born. Do you abort them?
Yeah, but these are issues that have to be made on decisions that have to be made on an individual level. I mean, look at Stephen Hawking. He was supposed to be dead 20, 30 years ago. Okay, had his parents aborted him, we would not have had the brilliance that he has blessed the world with. Okay, there are cases to be made where even though you might have a shitty personal life, that you should be allowed to live. I don't know the answer. I don't think anybody has the answer. Sometimes there are no answers. Sometimes the question is just wrong. But the fact is that you do have arguments for both sides, and you have to recognize that. I would not say that somebody who is known to be going to be born with a certain disease or deficiency should not be allowed to live, even either legal reasons or even purely emotional ones from the parents. I'm not sure that that's a good enough reason. It's their decision to make it. But I'm saying I might not actually be convinced.
This one's mostly for George again. There is a process already in use, in fact, called pre-implantation genetic diagnosis in combination with in vitro fertilization. And what it's typically used for and what it could be used for, both in the realm of reality, the here and now, tomorrow it could be done, right, is, well, two parents that are carriers or of genetic kind of disease want to ensure that they have a child that doesn't have the disease. So they'll have a large number of embryos created by in vitro fertilization, and then they will be screened for the disease genetically.
Is that
And then, yeah, only a embryo that's clear of a disease would be chosen, and they can also screen for a number of diseases at once. So, for instance, if you wanted to prevent some long laundry list of diseases, like Huntington's, sickle cell anemia, various kinds of muscular dystrophy, and so on, you could just use more embryos, and then do the screening and pick one that comes out clean. Okay, George.
That's the process. I think I read a newspaper or a topic about it, but I didn't read the article. That's the scientific process. I think you mean in which they use 3 DNA samples to make one child. Is
No,
that?
no.
No, okay, that's not. But I wouldn't be against it if you know the fetus will have a distinct disease and you can repair it. For me, logically, it would still potentially be a fully functional, potential sentient human being. So I wouldn't be against something like that.
Okay, and well, I should mention that one of the tricks though is that you're trying to create enough embryos by IVF, in vitro fertilization, so that you'll get at least one that passes, and you generally have kind of a margin for safety. So when you actually do the screening, you'll actually typically find that 5 or 10 or maybe more are actually clean. They actually don't have the diseases. So at that point, there's something of an arbitrary choice of which one to actually carry to term, but I think you've got enough to go on. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, and you mean basically the normal in vitro fertilization process. I'm basically not against that unless they throw the other good embryos away. Then I would be against that. But I won't. I do not have a problem with that process.
Okay. Well, I mentioned though that it kind of guarantees. Not guarantees, but in order to essentially be relatively sure at least one will pass, enough are made at the beginning that you'll get 5, 10 or more that are actually pass, right? So are you wanting to have all those carry to term?
No, that's the point, of course, and that's some of those scientific ways they approach that is something I personally still have to work out, because you basically would have a fully functional fully functional human being, and you only use one to impregnate a mother. What do you do with the other 9? I think they keep them on ice after something like that. I'm not sure. So that's a difficult point, but that still does not mean I respond emotionally any different to normal abortions.
Well, but when you engage in this kind of process, maybe if you engaged in it on a wide scale, you would essentially ensure that quite some number of horrific diseases are prevented. From ranging from Huntington's to Tay-Sachs to Down syndrome to muscular dystrophy and so on, possibly even Hawking's own ALS. So when all those things are considered as far as improving the quality of life, can you so readily dismiss it because discards embryos that are untainted or redundant?
No. My point is, I'm not against repairing if two parents have a specific disease within their family and they run the risk their baby getting that disease, then I'm not against that. I am only saying, what if they, of the 10 samples, they take one that is clean, what they do with the other 9 is something I may object to if they throw it away, basically. But then, of course, then I have to answer the question: what do you do with the other 9? Do you keep them on ice and do you use them for other mothers? Well, that's something I haven't worked out, but that does not mean I do not have an emotional response to it. I just have not worked out my logical thinking and my reasoning on the subject of the other 9.
I think this is going to go on for
But
quite a
what
while.
about the ones who were born?
You can continue this in the after show, but I think I really want to start closing up now because people seem to want to leave, and I think people are going to become disinterested.
Yes.
But you can continue this in the Hangout. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining, and if you want to get an invite, then please add me on the Google Plus circles, and you'll get an invite every 2 weeks. So anyway, thanks everyone.